Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending the Urban League of Portland's Meet the Candidate Forum for City Council District 4. My name is Sahan McKelvey. I am the Director of Advocacy and Engagement for Self Enhancement, Inc., and I will be tonight's moderator. Before we get started, I want to thank our community partners for supporting tonight's forum. Tonight, we will feature candidates running for City Council District 4, including Mitch Green, Chad Likens, Sarah Silkey, and Eric Zimmerman. Tonight's candidates are here to highlight their campaign proposals and answer questions related to our community. I'd like to talk about the Urban League of Portland's candidate selection process. The upcoming changes in Portland's government created unique challenges in planning this year's forums, and difficult choices had to be made, but the Urban League is committed to impartiality and stuck to an objective criterion for inclusion. In short, they examined candidates' performance in small donor matching funds, prior political history, and the number of labor unions, community-based organizations. There will be an opening statement, questions, and a closing statement. Although we hope the forum will be an exciting and informative event, we also want it to be an orderly and respectful one. So all defamatory, abusive, profane, threatening, offensive, or hate speech are strictly prohibited. Candidates that engage in this behavior will be removed from the forum. So going forward, here are a few ground rules for our candidates. First, please remain muted if you are not answering a question. Candidates will have 2 minutes for their opening statement. When questions are asked, the candidate will have 3 minutes to respond. After the questions are complete, the candidate will have 2 minutes to then deliver a closing statement. Again, we just ask that we all are courteous and conscientious of time. So with that, we will get started with candidates' opening statements. So we will begin the opening statements in alphabetical order. When called upon, each candidate, you will have 2 minutes to introduce yourself and share any thoughts that you want our community to be aware of. So we will go in alphabetical order again. And Mitch Green, you are up first. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be invited to this forum tonight and to share myself with you and a little bit about my motivation for running. So I am Mitch Green. I live in West Portland Park. I'm running for Portland City Council in District 4. I'm a combat veteran. I'm a PhD economist and first generation college student, child of a kind of a welder in town. So I'm a working class candidate. I grew up in Portland, and I love this city very much. And I've seen it go through different periods of change, growth, and stagnation. And I'm running because I think that we're in a moment in the trajectory of our city where we've got a choice we can make. We can deal with our crises by kind of a conservative politics, or we can lean into our values and try to build systems and institutions that take care of all of us from the bottom up. And that's the latter approach is the thing I believe strongly in, and I know that we can do it. Some of the things that I would like to champion if elected to city council is social housing. I think that when we talk about providing affordable housing, I think that we should mean it. And I think that the best way to provide that is to directly target housing at everyone's income level, irrespective of your income level. That is something that happens in other parts of the world, and we can do that here. I believe very strongly in climate justice and equity investments. And I think we need to accelerate the rate at which we make our communities safe from extreme weather events. And finally, I have this novel idea that it really shouldn't take 25 years to build sidewalks in this city. I think that if we want to be a mature city that takes care of our people, we should have a mature infrastructure program. So I'm probably out of time. I do hope that you'll check out my website at mitch4portland.com, and thank you.
Thank you, Mitch Green. And Chad Likens, you now have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. I've been excited all day to be able to be with you all and share some of the thoughts and accomplishments of the campaign. My name's Chad, and I live in Hayhurst in Southwest Portland. I originally from Alabama. I was born to two teenage parents there, and I grew up in a house where addiction was something that my mom had struggled with even from before I was born. So I know what it's like to care about somebody who's struggling and to feel like you're not getting the help you need. I think that's something that a lot of Portlanders are feeling right now. I was able to get out of that house and go to college and get a PhD in leadership and policy at Vanderbilt. And I focused on out of school learning for kids because I remember reading for the first time that 2/3 of the variance and outcomes for young people are due to things that have nothing to do with what happens during the school day. And it was my passion to kind of try to work on the big stuff. I went to the University of Hong Kong and taught leaders from all over the world how to use evidence to make good policy. And when I came back home to the United States, I moved to Portland and I got to work in my own neighborhood, working on out-of-school learning opportunities for kids. And the organization I started has served probably 1,000 families that live right here in District 4. My campaign's been really active. We've hit over 11,000 doors in all 33 neighborhoods. We've had a lot of youth engagement from all the high schools here. And we're taking this message that we need to have a vision for the city. Homelessness should be rare and brief. Addiction shouldn't be a life sentence, and everybody should get to live in a neighborhood that is complete and connected. I'm excited to tell you sort of how we plan on doing that later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad Likens. It is an exciting time to be a Vanderbilt Commodore nowadays. Sarah Silky, you now have 2 minutes.
All right. Well, I want to start off by thanking you so much for allowing me the opportunity to chat with you tonight. As you know, my name is Sarah Silky. I'm a mom, an engineer, a public servant, and a problem solver. I grew up here in Portland. My parents did the Saturday market, and I spent a lot of time under the Burnside Bridge as a kid. I tell people it was a little safer back then, but we still experienced poverty. And, you know, I was very lucky in that I also did very well in school and was able to go on to college and then on to get a PhD in environmental engineering. And one of the things I also like to reflect on is that my situation, I always say I'm so grateful for the social safety net that allowed me to go from the home that I was raised in and get a PhD. And I often wonder if the same things would have occurred if I had been, had darker skin and not been a white girl. That's and I bring that up because a lot of I have a lot of friends who are like, well, poverty is poverty. And I think it's important, especially growing up in Portland, to acknowledge that it's not the same when you're different races. Anyways, I also want to bring up our campaign has been doing well. We've gotten several labor endorsements, Basic Rights Oregon, Apano, and the Mercury most recently. And I will check out my website, sarahsilky.com. Remember, it's a new era. Vote Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah Silky. And Eric Zimmerman, you now have 2 minutes.
Great. Hi, everybody. Eric Zimmerman here, and a pleasure to be here. Sorry we don't have more candidates available for folks to hear from. I'm Eric Zimmerman. I was born in Portland, and my mom's a retired Portland Public Schools teacher. I went to the University of Portland in North Portland for, on this panel, I'm the only one of us without a PhD, so I guess I should lean into that of just being a normal dude here, I guess. But I got some smart colleagues on this panel. But went to the University of Portland for undergrad and for graduate school. But I have been a long time, 17 years I spent both in a regular career here in Portland, but I've also spent 17 years as a part-time member of the Oregon Army National Guard, and I've been sent overseas a few times and always come home. And that's a lot of the story about why I'm running, is that Portland remains home no matter where I've ever gone in the world. Portland remains home. And I think that if we're going to talk about Portland's next chapter and overcoming what we've gone through this last few years, I think that the city council has got to focus on a few key areas. As a person who has worked at Multnomah County as a chief of staff for 2 county commissioners right now, Julia Brim Edwards, and previously Diane McKeel, as a person who has been a senior advisor to the mayor and a deputy city manager in a couple of other cities. I think I know what I'm talking about when I say that public safety and livability are front of mind for Portlanders. It is what the city council has got to tackle. Taking care of and enforcing our camping regulations, because we have created enough shelters with our new pod villages, the task sites, which I helped open and are our most successful shelters today. I think we need to have more of those so that we can successfully transition folks, but also end street camping and enforce those rules. And then lastly, I think that the other top three is that our housing reform for the housing process development reform is so needed. Portland has a way of really making everything take a really long time. And so that's key for me. So I've been endorsed by the Oregonian and by the Willamette Week, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Eric Zimmerman. And we will now begin the question portion of our forum. For each question, we will ask the questions in a predetermined order. When called on, you will have 3 minutes to respond to each question. Question 1, the number of households experiencing homelessness in Portland has increased significantly since the pandemic. Black residents in particular are roughly 400% overrepresented in our homeless population. What is your plan to increase access to culturally specific resources and housing for Black Portlanders? And how will you work to prevent them from experiencing homelessness moving forward? We will begin with Sarah Silky. Sarah Silky, you have 3 minutes to respond to question number 1.
All right, thank you. This is a really pertinent question, especially, when we hear Eric Zimmerman saying that we have enough shelters for everybody. Last I heard, we have over 5,000 unsheltered homeless people in Portland, and that's just from a single point in time. The actual number is actually much higher. We have less than 3,000 shelter beds. So I'm really confused about how we're going to enforce a camping ban when we don't have enough beds to shelter everyone. To increase access to culturally specific resources and housing for Black Portlanders, I think it's really tempting as a white person to like parachute in and say, you know what, I'm going to help you. I'm going to figure this out. Let me build some housing for you. But I've been in the game long enough to know that there are already people working on this problem who know a lot more than I do and have a lot more experience with it. And so what I would do is go and talk to the people who are doing the work now and ask them what they need to expand their programs. And I've done a little bit of that, and mostly they say they need funding. And I hear we don't have enough money. So I guess I want to share a little story. I was reading the Gumbo Coalition recently, Mark Morial, I think it is, and mayor of New Orleans, and he was talking about recovery in New Orleans, which was a pretty intense scenario. And they were able to start a summer jobs program. And one of the big challenges was that they did not have enough funding to actually do it. And so he was looking for the money to get this program up and going. And it turns out that they were able to take money that wasn't being used in the police overtime fund. And this is particularly relevant in Portland because just last week, our current city council looked at our budget and said, oh, we have some extra funds. Let's take $3 million and put it into our police overtime fund. We could use that money to increase accessible, culturally specific resources for Black Portlanders. Yes, one of my things is we have to have that 5,000 shelter beds. We need to have a range of shelter beds so that because not everybody is looking for the same thing in shelter and feels safe in the same space. And if you are a person of color who has been, racially attacked over the years, are you really going to be comfortable with a bunch of white people who are giving you side eye? I'll stop there.
Thank you, Sarah Silky. Next, Eric Zimmerman, same question. You have 3 minutes.
Thanks. Ultimately, I think the best thing we can do for housing access in Portland is reforming our housing development process, right? So that starts with getting the city of Portland back to and actually living up to a 90-day permit standard in the city of Portland for housing development. That means that we implement a permit upon review program for people who build homes and have a good, safe record of building homes, that they're able to do that with and get feedback from the city without having to go back to the start of the 500-day line that exists today. That we incentivize housing across the market at every type of housing, at every income level, so that the markets begins to actually saturate, because right now we've got folks who can pay for a lot of types of units who are crunching our naturally affordable units that exist across the city. And then we put public funds at our most difficult to develop, which is our 3-bedroom units, which in Portland, we really don't develop those. And yet those are what families need who are in poverty more than anything, is a 3-bedroom unit. And the SROs, single room occupancy, something we haven't built for years in this community for reasons that are kind of lost on a lot of us, but they're a huge step out of homelessness. If we saturate the market from one end of that bell curve to the next, and we incentivize the market to develop at all levels, then we also can be incredibly deliberate when it comes to ensuring that it is developed across all districts and all neighborhoods, and that we don't have one type of housing built in one neighborhood and another type built in a separate area, so that we create inequities. I'm a person who believes deeply in, if you're in a multifamily building, it should be a mixed income building. If you're in a neighborhood, I think neighborhoods should be mixed income neighborhoods. I think they're the healthiest. I think they make the best neighbors. I think they make the best schools. That has got to happen. And if we aren't deliberate about it, we will see different Portlanders moving neighborhoods, because we only create one type of housing in different neighborhoods that is, I think, very arbitrary, and it's very hurtful to families, and it's very hurtful to communities who have roots in certain parts of the neighborhood. And then ultimately, the county and the city both have a role in working with our community-based organizations who are very good at identifying folks who need the housing vouchers, who need assistance to get into those new developments. And I think that the way to work with the communities at the most hyper-localized level and make sure that we are providing housing for every group of Portlanders, particularly in those who are underserved, is that we do it through community-based organizations, and that we ensure that access meets their needs. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric Zimmerman. Mitch Green, same question. You have 3 minutes.
Muted. I appreciate the question. I agree with what Eric said about we need to reform the permitting process. We need to make it easier to build in this city. I'm 100% on board with sort of like the supply side. Let's get out of the way of developers to do their work. But one area that I think I'd like to emphasize here gets to the way that the city of Portland has pursued its development strategy for many decades, which is through our development commission, now known as Prosper Portland, and through the use of what I would say, frankly, are really blunt instrument tax increment financing districts, which have created really strong dynamics of gentrification and have fueled displacement in our city. And so I think that if we are going to draw new TIF districts to encourage development, which, by the way, comes at the public expense, then those need to be designed in such a way with very strict and very, very thoughtful enforcement mechanisms, so the Black community and communities of color can be at the table and ensure that those do not cause displacement, and in fact provide opportunities for wealth building within those communities. That's got to be key. And that's not something that the city is shy about doing. We've always put our thumb on the scale to steer the future of our city in a direction for the sake of economic development. And we shouldn't be afraid to do that. But I would urge us to say, why can't we steer it towards the people who have disadvantaged the most historically in this city? Some of our most charming neighborhoods, some of the neighborhoods where people who've moved here over the last few decades, white people in particular, were neighborhoods that the Black population lived in this city and got pushed out. So we've got to address our development strategy with an equity lens, first and foremost. And then the other part I would say is that, in terms of rental units, the least expensive way and the most efficient way to address homelessness is to prevent it from the first place. And so I think we need to have a very strong commitment to tenant stabilization measures. I think we need to go farther than what we have right now. That's why I'm running on a platform that calls for a more meaningful approach to rent control, something that we may have to lobby the state to do, but I think we can do it. If you talk to organizations like Path Home, they will tell you that if you want to stop the outflow and stem the bleeding with our homelessness crisis, you got to keep families in their homes, right? And the statistic that you laid out in the question is indicative of all realms of our economic process, where Black Americans are the first to be fired in the labor market. They're also the last to be hired in the labor market, and we don't want that same process to continue in our housing market. So I'm probably out of time, but that's my high-level view.
Thank you, Mitch Green. And Chad Likens, you can wrap up question 1 responses. You have 3 minutes.
Great. These are really some terrific ideas from my colleague candidates here. And I just want to add some things that are maybe a little bit more specific of maybe what it means to really be culturally specific resources and the part of the question that focuses on prevention. And I want to start by amplifying some of the work that is being done. So Shannon Jones-Isidore, who we are very excited to be seeing will be joining the State House soon, secured from the city permits for 50 recovery beds in Portland's West End. That's a huge win, and that's culturally specific. I know that at PSU, Marisa Zapata is working on a report about the specific issue, and I'm a big report reader. It's kind of like what I like to do, so I'm looking forward to that coming out. The Hattie Redmond Apartments, also the new Dr. Milner building. These are examples of slowly starting to chip away at the long wait list for the preference policy. Amplifying the work of Albina Vision Trust, making sure that as this project goes forward to cap the freeway and to create new opportunities for housing, that's done in a way that's being driven by the Black community. In general, my approach to homelessness here, we got to focus on all the things. It's got to be stabilization of people that are at risk, and on that I share a lot in common, I think, with Mitch. I want to say I got to spend half a day in eviction court with the Commons Law Center, and they have a budget of about $1.1 million a year, which allows them to go and help people that are facing eviction for non-payment of rent on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. They don't have the money to be there on Mondays or Fridays. So if you are facing eviction, ask for a Tuesday court date, because otherwise you're not going to have representation. For a small amount of money, we could have that be there all 5 days, and the amount that we would save, and also just the human cost of families having to leave and their kids being pulled out of school because they've been evicted, it would pay back great dividends. The other thing is that we need to speed up the permitting process. And the main reason is a little bit different than what you hear oftentimes. Right now, the people that actually benefit the most from extraordinary permitting delays are the largest developers. They're the ones that have the deep pockets to wait for 500 days for a permit. For us to get out of this housing crisis, we need 100 or more people to become developers. And for that to work, it's got to be possible for small and medium-sized developers to get a permit quickly, because they can't carry things for quite so long. I think that will also open up more avenues for this development to be led by the BIPOC community.
Thank you, Chad Likens, and thank you all of our candidates for your responses to question 1. Moving on to question 2. The city auditor recently found that Portland's inclusionary housing program has not increased housing access for Portland's worst off. This problem particularly impacts Black renters and families who face higher barriers to quality, affordable housing. How will you advocate for increased production and accessibility of housing? We'll begin with Sarah Silky. Sarah Silky, you have 3 minutes for question 2.
Okay. Let's see. So I was expecting one of the other ones to go first this time, but that's okay. I'll take it. The inclusionary housing program is based on the median family income. And I think the way it was set up does not necessarily take into account that the median family income for white people in Portland is significantly greater than the median family income for Black people and other people of color. So when you set something at 60% of MFI on average, most many low-income Black families are not going to be able to afford it. In addition, the program is set up so that you have to have a minimum. You still have to make, you can't make too much, but you have to make a certain amount in order to get into it, which is very challenging for the people who are making the least amount of money. As far as how will I advocate for increased production and accessibility? So like Eric Zimmerman was talking about on the permitting, I 100% agree that we need to improve our permitting times. I've worked for the city for the last 12 years. The last 2 years have been in permitting. So I have firsthand experience with how complicated and overly challenging our current codes are. And one of the first things to solve that is not just moving people around on the organization chart. We have to actually change our codes, and that's going to take some dedicated time and effort from City Council. There's going to be 12 of us. We're not going to be managing bureaus. I think we can get people on the same page and actually modify those codes so we can have a 90-day turnaround time. And that would do wonders for our housing production. I want to also note that new housing is not typically affordable housing, and we need to encourage and incentivize building more SROs and the 3-bedroom apartments. And I'll also note that, we used to have more single resident occupancy buildings, and they were torn down, not because they didn't work. They were torn down because they were unsightly and blighted, and were torn down to make room for clean new development. That was a goal of the city. So if we want increased access to low-income housing, we need to do the mixed-use development, and we also need, if we want to have affordable housing, we have to require that be a certain percentage of what is built and have some teeth in that staying there. Because right now, a developer can come in, go to the front of the line, say they're going to have inclusionary housing, and then
Thank you, Sarah Silky, for your thoughts. Eric Zimmerman, same question. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, thanks. I think ultimately the failure of IZ, of inclusionary zoning, it's a symptom of a failure of our entire housing development strategy, right? That was put in place when Portland was in a boom market, and I think the powers to be at the time who passed it thought that because so many folks wanted to be developing new housing in Portland, doing great big buildings, et cetera, that this was just a small ask to make. And what we've really seen happen is that too many things, and this is just one of them, too many things that were developed when Portland was cool and booming are not working when Portland is not developing. And this is one of those. I think what Sarah was probably going to say is that they can say that they're going to include inclusionary zoning and then buy their way out of it. And thank you, Sarah. I'm seeing the thumbs up. I'm not sure other viewers can see it, but that's what I think she's getting at. And that part of it is, well, I think I'm not sure about having that exist in our system in the future, but the point that has failed with it is that the city has not then taken those payments that were designed to then be able to saturate and include affordable units and developed in other places in Portland or in that same exact neighborhood in Portland. They haven't put those to good use. So I think that it is, when I say housing reform, like I did in my last response, this is included in that. I think that a washing of this to, like, how are we going to get mixed income development across every district in Portland, across every neighborhood in Portland, and make sure that if there is an off-ramp for certain developments and there's a large amount of money put aside, that it actually gets used and used as effectively as possible. The best way for us to increase the amount of affordable units in Portland is to make it easier and more quick to develop all types of housing so that the entire market is not crunching our naturally affordable units. And when we put public dollars at things like vouchers, when we put public dollars at housing development that is for a certain level of MFI, medium family income, that we are targeting a group who needs that help most and not just trying to deal with an issue where our entire market is squeezed. So I think that with the fix of housing reform, with quickening the pace of it, with putting public dollars in our extreme levels of the 3 bedrooms and the SROs, and then also having a whole washing conversation for how do we want to complete IZ in the future, that we'll see better access to those units, but it has to be deliberate. This will not happen by accident. And the other thing is I actually think that most developers want to be able to do this and make it pencil, because building buildings in Portland should be something that is a good and profitable thing for folks to take on, while also not having to jack up rents to a luxury level. A lot of folks want to make workforce housing.
Thank you, Eric Zimmerman. Mitch Green, you have 3 minutes, same question.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love this question. It's the thing I think about every single day. I'm just going to be blunt. The inclusionary zoning housing program has been an unmitigated disaster. There is zero accountability in it. The Portland Housing Bureau doesn't know how much money it's spent on it. It only measures first-year costs on the tax abatement program, but that's not the complete picture. There's a whole life cycle of costs here in the public money that has been given as a subsidy to developers who have not built any affordable housing, not in any meaningful sense. If you look at the state of Portland's housing, Portland Housing Bureau issues its state of housing report in 2023. If you look at the average Black household, there's only one neighborhood in the city of Portland where you can get a 2-bedroom apartment on a single income and it's not rent burdened, and that's 122nd and Division. That is a failure. And my diagnosis of that failure is an unwillingness for the city to take a direct approach in the production of affordable housing. We only prefer to do indirect approaches through tax abatements and incentive structures without really fixing any of the structural stuff that Eric mentioned, that any of these other candidates have mentioned. And so my approach to dealing with this is say, let's do an audit of the PHB's IZ program and go so far as maybe to suspend it and replace it instead with a social housing program where we can capitalize a revolving loan fund. And then the city can be in the driver's seat, contract with the developer to say, we're building a mixed income public housing development. And it's going to be in the neighborhoods that people want to live. So we're not shunting the Black community out to the margins of the city. And then we're going to rent it at 30% of people's income. So we can get a diverse array of incomes in there and make that building pencil out. I think that's the path forward. I think that we can afford to do that. We already spend a lot of money on housing. And so if we're going to do that, let's make it affordable. And that's the way you do it directly. I think it's really unacceptable that this program's been in place for a long time, and there's no place in this city where a Black family can live on a non-cost burden framework. And I don't think that waiting for the market to get there eventually is going to be satisfactory for any family in this city. So I think we need to take very fast, urgent, and direct action with the social housing program. I don't see the timer going, but I feel like that's probably been about long enough. So I'll yield the rest of my time. Thanks.
Thank you, Mitch Green. And Chad Likens, same question. You have 3 minutes.
Thanks. It's important to kind of remember that this is all deliberate. These were policy choices through racial covenants and exclusionary zoning. There were choices to keep out working people, and especially Black working people, from certain neighborhoods. And we still live with that legacy. And a lot of affordable housing was destroyed, whether it be what is now the critical energy infrastructure hub. There were thousands of units over there, or in South Waterfront. There are a lot of housing stock that we decided to basically defund. On production, I'm kind of a yes and on all of these things. One of the things that I want to do in the first 90 days is to pass the Inner East Side for All program, which would upzone from about 12th to 60th to allow construction up to 4 floors. They call it 4 floors plus corner stores. That's going to unlock a whole lot of zone capacity for housing that currently doesn't exist. For permitting and in general for like how we govern the production of housing, I'm a big believer in incentives, and I'm usually skeptical about mandates. We use incentives to get more of what we want, and we use mandates to keep things away that we don't want to happen. So mandating a certain number of units to be built at an affordable level is always risky because, as we saw, developers do all kinds of tricks to dodge things. Whether it's if the requirement kicks in at 20 units, they build a 19-unit building. Moving on to the discussion of accessibility, I think the things that I talked about in production are important to lay the groundwork for social housing. First off, we have to make it legal, like from a zoning perspective, to construct a lot of this. I think it's a really good thing. We're also doing some things right now that are really exemplary. The units that are scheduled to be produced on the Broadway corridor are, it was the most exciting housing announcement that I've seen all year, because it includes family size units. There is a really large focus on units that are for one person or for two people. And in Southwest Portland and in Northwest Portland and really all over the district, there's a lot of families that are struggling for housing. And that is the number one reason people give on exit surveys for why they leave Portland. It's the housing cost. So if we can make this the best city for families to live, where they know they can find a home, then everything falls into place after that. Our schools will be well funded because we got more kids coming through, and our neighborhoods will be more vibrant. I believe in the North-Northeast preference policy. I think that that's an important thing to maintain and expand. I think it's also useful at times to buy old housing stock and earmark it for affordable housing. You can usually buy those for about a third of the cost of new construction. And to have a greater focus, not on the 80% of median family income, because that's basically market rate, but 30 to 60%.
Thank you, Chad Likens, and thank you to all the candidates for your responses to question 2. Moving on to the next question, question 3. If elected to City Council, you will take office on the same day as a new voter-approved police oversight board. State data shows that Portland Police Bureau stops on Black residents have increased by 17%, while stops on white counterparts have decreased by 4%. How will you work with that board to ensure disparities in policing in Portland are monitored, corrected, and prevented? For question 3, we will begin with Eric Zimmerman. Eric Zimmerman, you have 3 minutes.
Thanks. I mean, I think that, the independence of that board, right, remaining independent from the Bureau is ultimately important as they take on this work. I think that there's parameters there that have to do with access to information, have to do with the ability to call for investigation that are incredibly important, and when and how they figure out information, and when and how we find trends like this statistic of 17% and 4% and that disparity. If we can do that in a reasonable manner, if we can do that with an abundance of information, I think then that the community is set up right now for, I think, a very important feedback loop, so that training in the Police Bureau is something that is incredibly deliberate about the problem that we are trying to solve for, instead of kind of being obtuse in terms of what are the challenges that we're facing, and what is leading to the stoppage rates being different or being disparate between different communities. So I think what I hope is that it doesn't start off as a very combative kind of relationship, because I don't know that that will help us get to the question about 17% increase and a 4% decrease in populations. If we can do that, and we can incorporate training, and we can ensure that a community voice and a community experience is brought into that training, then I think our officers leave that and grow in Portland with the experience and the know-how and the understanding of norms amongst different communities, their own biases that they project onto the community as they go through their work that we all do and that we all grow up with, and the way that we go through life. Being able to recognize that comes from training. It doesn't happen by accident. It comes from hard conversations. It doesn't happen by accident. And I hope that is the direction where we use an oversight board that has a strong relationship and not just a combative relationship, so that type of training is something that's seen as a way for folks to attack a problem when we acknowledge that there is a problem. And I think that's one of the first steps. There are a lot of folks who are talking about changes here. I think that with the amount of money that exists there and with some of the independent parameters that exist with the oversight committee, that those are going to allow us to think even more creatively, more than just a problem occurred and we're going to investigate it and then have a finding. If that's all that happens, then I think we'd be falling short. And including the community early and including the community where they're at and with changes in how they're feeling that policing is going is going to help us evolve that to be something that's responsive for Portlanders.
Thank you, Eric Zimmerman. Mitch Green, same question. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, I think the voters in Portland spoke very loudly when they passed the ballot measure that enabled this commission with 82% of the vote, that there was appetite for a very strong and independent board that, not only wanted to sort of like provide, a sort of independent measure of accountability, but really make up for a long-term deficit of accountability in this community. And so there's a lot of trust that doesn't exist between the police and the community. And that's for a reason. And so I think that, in looking at the challenge ahead, frankly, I am a little disappointed that the strength of that board has been watered down with the recent city council structure and proposal that's been adopted. I think it's a little bit troubling that, you have to kind of go through this sort of litmus test to make sure that there's not like an overt police bias. Because what does that mean? I mean, if you self-select into a police accountability commission because you care about making sure that there is a meaningful institutional guard against that, does that mean you're biased against the police? And so I'm a little bit worried about the boundaries that exist now with this commission. And so I think if elected, and in my relationship with this oversight committee, my emphasis is gonna be making sure that it's going to, however we structure it, however we enable it, and make appointments to the board, are going to be aimed in a direction that's in line with the voters' intent to move us forward in the city that has a police force that knows the limits of its charge, and that there is trust in the community.
Thank you, Mitch Green. Chad Likens, same question. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, I want to say thanks to Senator Lou Frederick for actually, bringing these numbers to us so that we can have data to back up what everybody has long suspected is the case, that there's these racial disparities. Without the state leading this effort, it becomes harder to advocate. I think that this is a good example of something that we repeat a lot in city government, where we try to fix by enforcement something that is just messed up by design. Enforcement of traffic safety is the most expensive and least effective way of doing it. And it produces all of these racial disparities. So we've got to have a broader picture of what does it look like to have safety by design, both traffic safety and then safety from violence as well. The other thing here is to take the focus not just on individual actions, but on systemic racism. Systemic racism that's baked into the way that our roads were built and in the way that our police department is structured and the accountability or lack of accountability in it. The police union here hasn't been a great partner in implementing accountability, and that is making it very, very hard to build trust in the community, that they can turn to their police and know that they're there to protect them. I believe that the people that sit on this commission should be picked independently. I do think that we can reach a compromise that will be acceptable to everyone. If you knock enough doors, you talk to everybody. And I talked to a PPB officer who said that, of course, he could not sit on a committee and fairly evaluate a colleague who he'd have to call for backup later, or he wouldn't even be able to pick who should do that. That's not the role of a Portland police officer. Technical guidance, technical expertise, having somebody to turn to explain a procedure or what a code means, there is a role for that. But it would be a non-voting thing, and it shouldn't be a Portland police officer. We ought to be able to borrow people from Beaverton or Tigard or someplace like that. It's really important that we restore this trust because public safety is a public good. And the biggest nightmare that I have is that we turn to private security, which is completely unaccountable. And we get a situation like we have right now in the Pearl and in Goose Hollow and in downtown, where we have essentially private mercenaries. Some are assigned to patrol buildings, some are assigned to patrol streets, and sometimes they show up and there have been anecdotes of them even drawing guns on each other. So we got to fix this.
Thank you, Chad Likens. Sarah Silky, same question. You have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you. It's really disappointing, having listened to discussions around Portland policing for so long to hear that we are still going in the wrong direction and are increasing the already disproportionate stops on Black residents and decreasing stops on white residents. I think the most important thing with this new board, I mean, we've talked about who's going to be appointed, and presuming we appoint reasonable people to the board. I think the really important thing is going to be to listen to them and implement their recommendations. City of Portland has a remarkable track record of setting up advisory committees and getting recommendations and then not following them. We're the city that plans instead of the city that works and implements things. So, and that is something that as the city council, we're going to be able to do because we will have control of the budget. So when recommendations are made, we'll be able to implement them. I think it's going to be especially important to listen to recommendations around training. I think this has been mentioned already, but I'm going to second that. As a white person who grew up in Portland, I will admit that I was really clueless about how racist our city is when I was a kid. And, I think that was actually structurally intentional. I was, grew up in this little bubble. And it's taken, and I'm not going to pretend that I no longer racist, but it's taken it's taken a lot of training. It's not just me thinking about it, it's like going through training. And I think it's going to be really important for our existing police to go through more training. It's also, we need to look at recruitment and retention. It's not just hiring more Black officers, it's retaining them. This is also an issue across the city. We're actually pretty good at hiring people of color, but retention is really challenging. They leave at a much higher rate than their white counterparts. And it's usually because they say they don't feel welcome and they're not supported in their jobs. And so this is something the city can do much better on. I'm going to leave it at that. We need to listen to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah Silky, and thank you all the candidates for your responses to our third question. We will now move to our last question tonight, question 4. In the last 4 years, there have been more than 200 traffic fatalities across Portland, impacting both pedestrians and other drivers. Research shows that drivers in Portland are less likely to safely yield for Black pedestrians. Additionally, a Vision Zero report this year found that Black communities in Portland experience traffic violence at a disproportionate rate. Given these troubling findings, how will you work with local, regional, and state partners to increase safety on our roads? For question 4, we will start with Chad Likens. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you for this question. I began that work before announcing that I was going to run for office. Started working with my state representatives who've endorsed me, Dacia Graber and Mark Gamba, as well as my Metro councilors, and have been endorsed by 4 of them. Because there's a lot of places where it's an act of courage to ride a bike or to walk to the bus stop or to walk to school in District 4. And that's because when we designed roads, there was no attention. Let me say it a different way. Our values were inverted. The values that I want to bring to our transportation infrastructure are, number 1, safety, and number 2, cost. Those are the 2 things. But instead, we've put speed How fast can cars go past your house? And volume, how many cars can go past your house? And those priorities become more pronounced the more Black people live in a neighborhood. There was a great New York Times article a year ago that looked at this, and they found that Black people were more than twice as likely for each mile walked to be struck and killed by a vehicle than white people, and 4.5 times more likely to be killed while on a bike than white people. That's because when they laid out roads, they decided to put arterials mainly through Black neighborhoods. And you can see it here in Portland as well. Like we did the exact same thing. We had the same designers. So this is a systems problem, and we don't need city councilors that try to pin it on individual choices, whether it's or individual behavior, whether it's a driver being distracted or a cyclist or a pedestrian. And again, we have to remember that we can't just fix by enforcement what we bungled by design. There's a role for enforcement, whether it's speed cameras or other means, but you'll never be able to enforce your way out of this. So things like speed bumps, narrowing lanes, traffic diverters, modal filters, better lighting, sidewalks, those are life-saving, and they're also tremendous investments in the livability of our city. All of our favorite parts to walk around or to visit shops, they're in those old streetcar neighborhoods before we designed them around the speed of cars. It's when we focused on what is it like to live on your street versus what is it like to blast through your street in an automobile. Some places that I think need specific attention in the city: Northeast Rosa Parks, East 122nd, Northeast Prescott, Killingsworth, and then continued investment in 82nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad Likens. Mitch Green, same question. You have 3 minutes.
It's hard to follow that. Chad gave some great answers, probably why I'm voting for him. Yeah, I'll sort of reemphasize some of that stuff and say that I would also like to kind of connect it to the statistic that I gave you earlier on where it's affordable for an average Black household to live, which is basically not anywhere close in the central part of the city. And so if you connect that with this idea that as you sit in your car, your commute gets longer and longer, people get impatient, and then you concentrate that with where Black people live and work and commute, you're going to have a concentration of vehicular violence on that just from the environmental system design piece that sort of Chad mentioned. And so I think if we're very serious about reducing that in a way that's equitable, and sort of right some wrongs, then we need to be very aggressive on making sure that our commitment to affordability in all parts of the city is tied to our commitment to transit justice. These dense walkable neighborhoods are also what makes possible a fast, rapid, and cost-efficient transit system where people don't have to drive across the city for an hour to get to work and back. And I agree with everything said about the infrastructure-based approaches to Vision Zero, to reducing traffic fatalities. You cannot engineer your way out of, or you can't enforce your way out of that. You need to engineer your way out of that. I do think there's a role to play with fixing some norms that have shifted. I think during the pandemic era, we did go through a norms shift behavior with the way that we drive, and that's everyone in this city. I've seen no one turns their lights on at dusk anymore, which is something that's just burned into my brain. I always do that. That's a habit shift. People drive very recklessly in this town, and when you pair that with the fact that our vehicles are extremely heavy these days, because there's a sort of arms race with vehicle size. Like I've got to get a bigger SUV to protect my family from someone else who now has a bigger SUV, and so on and so forth. And then you pair that with the racial, spatial distribution of our cities, you're going to get those outcomes that we don't like. And so we've got to get away from this world in which we tolerate those norms of fast driving. You can do road diets. All of the ODOT arterials that we have should be reconfigured to be slow-moving streets that have mixed modalities to them. And I'll mute because my dogs are barking and I'm out of time. Thanks.
Thank you, Mitch Green. Next up for our last question, Sarah Silky. Same question. You have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you. This is a great question. It's really interesting how it's both, well, I want to say one thing, like traffic fatalities affect all of us. But if we can solve it for the people who are most intensely affected, we're solving it for everyone. So this is something where it, it really behooves us to dig into this and deal with the dangers of our streets right now. I totally agree with what Chad and Mitch have already brought up about the engineering of our streets. And, when I first heard about Vision Zero, I was like, oh, that's awesome. And then I learned that the biggest thing they were implementing was reducing speeds. I'm like, well, can we have some sidewalks? Because I live in Southwest Portland and I don't have any sidewalks on my street. And streets that don't have any traffic, that's not such a big deal. But there's a lot for me to get to a grocery store. I have to walk on streets that do not have sidewalks and have high traffic volumes. The posted speed might be 30 miles an hour, but people go 45 miles an hour. That's deadly. And I know the same thing happens in East Portland, where they also don't have sidewalks. So that's an opportunity I'm looking forward for Districts 4 and District 1 to collaborate on. Another thing I want to bring up is that, as a climate champion, I really think it's important to think about one of the reasons it's not just Portland that traffic fatalities have gone up. And part of the reason is because our cars are bigger and heavier. And part of that is wanting to be safe. But by making myself safe in a big, heavy car, I'm making it actually more dangerous for my kids if they are not in the car with me. So, and this is not something Portland City Council is going to solve, but changing that mindset that I have to be in this big, heavy car to be safe. In order to go green, yes, electric is great, but lightweight is even better. So active transportation needs to be encouraged, which we're kind of doing the opposite when it's dangerous to be on the streets. So we need our jobs and our play to be next to where we live. We have an opportunity right now with downtown being hollowed out from office workers not going downtown anymore. So we can revision our downtown and make it into a place where people can live, play, and work. And I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah Silky. And Eric Zimmerman, you get the final answer for question 4. You have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you. Ultimately, I think that the more that we can standardize what drivers, what pedestrians, what riders, what all users of the right-of-way can expect, the safer the system is going to be. And as a city, as a community, we have set some great goals when it comes to multimodal, increasing pedestrian and bike access, and not relying on the car as much. But something has happened over the last decade or more where we used to always know that Portlanders, we were known, you looked over your right shoulder because that's where the bike lane was going to be. We understood it was predictable. We knew what the markings on the road would look like. Today, we have such a shotgun blast across the city when it comes to what side of the road is the biker or pedestrian going to come from? What color is the lane going to be painted? What are the markers that are being used? We've got to standardize so that we can then make all types of uses of the right-of-way more safe. And I think it makes it more predictable. The other piece that I think are really important is that, if we think about just the types of fatalities, and they're all tragic, but we also have a lot of folks, the more you have folks who are living in the right-of-way, the more you have folks who are using very dangerous drugs and are jutting out into roads. This is a high number of our fatalities, and we've got to talk about that as part of this discussion, because the rampant drug use, the rampant camping, we banned camping in the mayor's office along high crash corridors for a very specific reason, to get at this issue. These are interrelated. It doesn't get talked a lot about in the PBOT world and the transportation world, but that type of social conversation is very important. I've gone through it, others have gone through it, where you drive down Division and it's a rainy fall day, and the way the lights hit, and all of a sudden you realize at the last second that there's a human body next to you standing there waiting to cross, and they're kind of doing the wander through those lanes, which are a really dangerous corridor already. That happens so often in different parts of our community. Sarah's right. District 4 and District 1, we have a lot of unique commonalities amongst our two districts, as the two districts with the least amount of sidewalks. We're the two districts where people put gravel down in front of their homes to stop the mud. We're the two districts that don't have paved roads. And we also have some of the darkest, most unlit areas. And I think there's a lot of commonality there that we can make transportation safer for everybody. And lastly, I just want to end is that the vice president of PSU shared with me 2 years ago when I was in the mayor's office about how he had students who were coming in from East Portland and East County and disenrolling from the in-person because TriMet was so displeasurable, unsafe to be a part of. We've got to make TriMet a safe experience and a pleasurable experience for everybody so that it's being used, which makes the roads safer for everybody instead of options that are not safe along long distances. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric Zimmerman, and thank you to all the candidates for your thoughtful responses to the 4 questions that we asked tonight. We will now conclude with closing statements from the candidates. We will go in reverse order from the opening. So, Eric, I hope your vocal cords are still ready to roll. We will begin with you for your closing statement. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. I appreciate being here. These are great questions, smart group of people. What I think that District 4 is really looking for, and a lot of the city of Portland is looking for, is a city council who can commit to increasing public safety, who can increase livability, who's willing to take a line on how rampant we allowed open air drug use and open air and open street camping to exist. I've been a part of making solutions on all of that. I helped close down the drug market at 4th and Washington in my district in downtown Portland. I helped expand the tree lighting programs, millions of dollars of lighting that has made downtown safer. When the county tried to implement a foil and straw program for fentanyl users, I helped stop that. And we've just got to have a back to basics approach at the city of Portland. We've got to have a back to basics approach when it comes to shelter is a deep need, and we've got to invest in it. I've helped create the most successful shelters that we have in Portland. And when we did that, we also put in place the most successful good neighbor agreements so that the neighborhoods were not overly impacted by the problems that sometimes come with social services, at least in our history. So we've got to talk about reality. We've got to talk about practical solutions. There's a lot of smart people here. And I think that that type of ability to get at what are Portlanders most concerned about is going to help us. We have to have the long-term talks about housing reform. We've got to increase the number of neighborhood response teams in the police bureau who are doing the community policing that we need. We've got to talk about innovative solutions to gun violence that involve community, that expand things like the entertainment detail in Old Town, who took shootings as the highest neighborhood of shootings to one of the lowest. Those kind of conversations and being open to them is how we're going to move forward. And like I said in my opening, I'm really proud to be endorsed by the Oregonian and the Willamette Week, the business community, and the labor community on par. And it's been a great experience. So thanks, everybody. I hope you rank me #1.
Thank you, Eric Zimmerman. Sarah Silkey, you have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I want to touch on public safety for a minute. It's something Portlanders are really concerned with right now. And I hear people wanting more police. I hear people wanting more Portland street response. I want to bring it back to during the pandemic, we experienced a loss of our feelings of normalcy. So we talk, reckless driving went up dramatically. A lot of our norms kind of just fell apart. We were in lockdown. And right now, people feel like there's still this residual sense of a feeling of lawlessness. And it's really unsettling. To me, the solution to this is not a police crackdown. It's not more enforcement. The solution is that we need to renew the social contract. This means providing services fairly. This means not letting our neighbors die on the street. It means having compassion and treating each other like human beings. It's not us versus them. It's all of us together. And it means both being compassionate and holding ourselves accountable. So, and I think with this new style of government, we have an opportunity to renew that social contract with the people of Portland and to establish a stronger sense of community and to set the precedent that we are We're not going to attack each other. We're going to ask each other how we're doing, and we're going to work together and solve our problems. It's a new era. Vote Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah Silky. Chad Likens, 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm asking you to rank me number one. And that's because I think I have the breadth of experience and the depth of connection to District 4 that you don't often find in a local candidate. And I want to be really clear about what the vision is and what's at stake here. My vision, I can talk about three parts of it. The first is that we are a city in which homelessness is rare and brief. And not because we decided to just do a block by block military style roundup and put everybody in a parking lot like they did in Grants Pass right now, but because we invested in scientific proven solutions, giving every single person a room with a door that locks, putting the services on site so they don't have to go look for it, and giving them everything they need to be successful, allowing them to bring their pets, their possessions, and their loved one. If we do that, we know we can move folks to permanent housing at 4 times the rate, and we need to be accelerating the rate of housing production. We can also be a city in which addiction isn't a life sentence. We know that jails aren't an effective treatment for addiction. These are really hard things. It's a chronic relapsing thing. And just because somebody needs help, we got some folks that act like that's a reason for not helping them. That's a reason for punishing them. We can enforce our laws, but also be really focused on getting people what they need. And right now we're in a situation where we're repeating the same mistakes with deflection that we did with 110. There is no treatment there. And the last thing is that we got to realize that Portland's strength, the thing that we have that no other cities have, they have subdivisions and we have neighborhoods. And that is what's going to bring people here. Complete connected neighborhoods for all ages and stages. If we do that, we'll be known as the best city in America to raise a family, to grow old, and to start a business. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad Likens. Mitch Green, you have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
All right, thank you. I'll close this out. I'll just say it again. I'm running for city council because I'm not betting against Portland. I think that we're in this vibe right now where it's, everyone, your auntie from back east will say, Portland is burning. Are you okay? Are you burned? And it's just, there's a perception that this city is irredeemably broken. And I don't think that's true. And I think this is a city full of fighters. People like you who tuned in tonight who demand change, right? And so I'm running because I think that we owe it to ourselves to stand up to the plate in this moment and continue to push forward on creating a vision of a city that we want to leave our children, a city that's just, sustainable, and where you don't get pushed out at the expense of progress. I do believe that the crucial cut point along a lot of this is to say we have to stop this development pattern that we've had in this city for a really long time that says it's only just going to be for wealthy real estate developers, and everyone else is lucky if they benefit along the way. That has led to a situation where only the most well off of us have done well. And it's hurt many of our communities. And so I think if we are going to change course and build that future that we want to have, we need more voices at the table. We need to bring in our labor unions. It's more than just an endorsement. You want to organize them and have them at your back. You need to bring in communities of color, organize them and have them at your back, and actually say we deserve airtime too. It's not just for folks who can write big checks and get your ear at the Mac Club. So check out my website, mitchforportland.com. I was endorsed by the Portland Mercury because I go hard in the progressive left lane. Thanks.
Thank you, Mitch Green. As tonight's candidate forum ends, I want to thank our partners at LNS Captioning and Open Signal who are airing this forum for all of you to view. I want to give a huge thank you to all of the candidates for participating tonight. And thank you as well to our community partners who are making this possible alongside of us. I also want to again highlight the importance of voting. Election Day is November 5th. Democracy only works when people vote. So please get registered 2 days ago. And if you, all of you, I hope you are registered at this point. Please, please, please get out and vote. At the Urban League of Portland, much of their work is done with local partners who have our deep commitment to our shared values. They would like to thank the following partners: Reimagine Oregon, NAACP of Portland, Fair Housing Council, SEIU 49, Welcome Home, Coalition of Black Men, Kairos PDX, Muslim Educational Trust, Women's Foundation, YWCA, Impact Northwest, Children's Institute, NEA, Latino Network, Northwest Pilot Project, and Self Enhancement Inc. Self Enhancement Inc. is my organization. Again, my name is Sahan McKelvey. I'm one of our directors at Self Enhancement Inc. And Self Enhancement Inc. guides underserved youth to realize their full potential. We work with schools, families, and partner organizations to provide support, guidance, and opportunities to achieve personal and academic success. To learn more about the critical work that we do at Self Enhancement Inc., please visit our website at selfenhancement.org. In closing, please remember that the Urban League is a nonprofit that relies on donations and membership to serve the community. It is through your generosity that Urban League of Portland can host forums and other events like this. Again, tonight's event was part of the Urban League series of virtual candidate forums for the general election. Please visit ulpdx.org to learn more about this series of events. If you need assistance voting or registering during the election season, staff at Urban League are ready to talk with you. Reach out at Urban League's website, social media pages, or call 503-280-2600 for assistance. On behalf of Urban League President Nikenge Harmon Johnson, the Board of Directors at Urban League PDX, and all of Urban League's members, thank you so much to everyone in the audience for joining us tonight. I am Sahan McKelvey. It has been my privilege being the moderator tonight. Thank you again to all of the candidates who participated with us, and good night.